wilding pines, they've come under the microscope a bit recently.
Yeah, so the government's just announced $16 million of new funding to control wilding pines. But so far it's been pretty ineffective. They're still spreading. In fact, 6.5% of the country is currently considered to be affected by wilding conifers.
Interesting that we tried very hard to get them to be established, and now they become invasive.
Yeah, it was a huge effort to introduce pines. Pines were brought from the Northern Hemisphere and introduced all around the Southern Hemisphere, in New Zealand, Australia, South America, Africa. And most of the introductions failed. They had a really hard time getting it to grow until they realized that they were missing something, which is that pines rely on mycorrhizal fungi, which are beneficial fungi that grow on the pine's roots and that bring nutrients from the soil and give it to the pine trees.
The sort of things we've got in guts, for example.
Yeah, effectively. Most organisms rely on some form of symbiosis for their normal growth and nutrient uptake. The difference with pines is that they rely on these fungi that form a mushroom that you can see, but it's still forming a symbiosis with the pine and helping it get the food it needs in order to grow.
And we imported that to actually help establish the pines.
Yeah, we very deliberately introduced fungi all the way through starting in the 1950s and 60s, but all the way through the 1980s, we were still deliberately introducing and spreading fungi in order to allow pines to grow better, particularly in plantations and also for erosion control in the high country.
And I guess with wilding pines, we sort of overdid it.
Yep, indeed. Sometimes you get too much of a good thing, and wilding pines have taken off. They've spread really quite widely and become a major issue both for the conservation estate and for high country farmers and for tourism.
So we've got a pretty interesting sort of a conundrum, really, haven't we? How do we fix it?
Yeah, and that's the problem. And what we've done is we've focused on killing pines, and there's been a lot of work to develop very strong herbicides that can be used either backpack sprayers or helicopters to kill the wilding conifers, and we've achieved that reasonably well. What we're not doing so well is actually restoring the ecosystem. So we can go in and we can kill the pines, but all that we're getting back are exotic grasses and reinvasion by pines a few years later. It really is going to take a new approach to controlling wilding pines that thinks not just about killing the trees, but also what do you want to get? What's your objective 5 or 10 years down the road? How are you going to get back to a native ecosystem?
Is it as simple as killing off the mushrooms?
Probably not. We certainly know that introducing more fungi would be a bad idea. Killing the mushrooms is difficult, and we don't really have ways of doing that. Fungicide's not particularly effective. There may be some advantages to controlling the spread of the fungi, though. Through recent work, we've shown that the mycorrhizal fungi associated with pines are being spread by deer and by possum, particularly Australian brush-tail possum, are eating the mushrooms and then moving out into grasslands and defecating, and their feces actually carries the spores of the fungi, which is then allowing the pines to invade because the fungi are already present in the soil. So perhaps through controlling mammals, we can also sort of get an extra benefit of controlling the spread of the fungi in the pines as well.
So everything within this circle has been introduced?
Yeah, we've introduced a lot of species to New Zealand. We've got currently more invasive plants in New Zealand than we have native plants. And they're interacting in entirely new ways. So we've brought in North American pines, European mammals, European fungi, and also Australian mammals, and they're all acting together, forming an ecosystem that's never existed anywhere on Earth before.
Do you reckon we'll ever get back to just growing natives alone?
Probably not natives alone, but I think we can manage the system and we can get better outcomes. We probably can't maintain a lot of the grassland areas. We induce those grasslands through burning and through grazing, and they're probably not sustainable. Pines can invade those very easily. But we might be able to restore them into a more woody ecosystem if we were to underplant with native species and sort of restore the native forest that was there before European settlement. That's probably our only real solution.